bolt-action basic training video. Today we're going to cover the topic of infantry combat. Really, this is the bulk of the rules fit into this space because the rules that I'm about to present today actually translate well into all the other aspects of the game, just with slight variations. Very easy to understand. There's not a whole lot of rule lawyering going around here. So we're going to start with building an army. There's two real ways to do it. They talk about it in the book. Most people don't consider one of the options because bolt action really tries to reinforce the fact that this game is supposed to reflect typical engagements in World War II. So you can't really stack too many of one type of unit in. There's what's called a reinforced platoon, or a platoon selector, and you can find these in the main rule book and in each of the army books, as well as many of the campaign books, different selectors that will give you a list of the minimum units you need to buy, and then the options of additional units you can add to your force. Now, a typical reinforced platoon will require you to have essentially 11 models. One HQ officer, it's either a first or second lieutenant, which can be, you'll see in your books, 1 to 3 men total in that unit. And then 2 squads, or infantry sections. Now, most armies have a minimum infantry section of 5 models. So that's 2 sections is 5 men, that's 10 models. So for 11 models, that's actually only about 150 points, so it's really a small point value game if you're going to go that low. But I'm just showing you it doesn't require a lot of models to get started. It doesn't require a lot of different things to get started. Okay. Now on top of that, you can add usually up to 3 or 4 other infantry sections, a couple special weapons teams, for example, like the machine gunner, a mortar, a sniper, a flamethrower, things like that. You can have 1 armored car, you can have 1 tank or self-propelled gun, or an aircraft vehicle, and you can have 1 transport for each unit in your list. That's kind of how you make a platoon in the standard way everyone has been doing it in most of the games. However, there's one thing to talk about here is you can really use any of the units you want. It's kind of an open way of doing it where you play with the units you want up to, again, same point limit you've set, and it gives you a little bit more flexibility because in reality some of the historical actions don't actually, the unit makeups that were there don't actually fit the reinforced platoons or platoon selectors really well. But in all fairness, those were special circumstances. So if you're really going to play the game, you really want to learn to have a lot of fun and really experience it to its fullest, try to use one of the platoon selectors. There's a lot to choose from as you get into the game, and trust me, you will not go wrong. You'll have a balanced force all the time. Okay, so that's how you make the list. Now, order dice. We're going to go ahead and we're going to talk about these dice and some of the different orders you're going to use. We're going to actually go into the classroom and talk about that. So let's leave from here and head down to the classroom environment, and we'll go over these various next rules. Okay? See you in a second. Alright, welcome to the classroom. Alright, today we're going to be covering pretty much all the basic rules. Hopefully this will not take too long, but again, since we're covering so much, basically through the entire turn, this video may be a little longer than some others. But let's just start with the beginning. First thing we gotta understand is pinning. How do you get, what are pins and what are they all about? I mentioned before you need some sort of pin marker, but the reason is whenever a unit gets shot at, if that unit is hit, regardless of wounding or not, if they're hit by a unit firing at it, they receive a pin. Now, in some bigger weapons, they might dish out more than 1 pin, but we're just going to call it a pin now. The only way to get pins is as a result of shooting, unless there's special rules in a scenario. So a shooting attack is what gets you a pin. For each successful attack from a different unit, another pin would be delivered. So if this unit was hit by 2 separate units, it gets 2 pins. No matter how many weapons hit or how many wounds it's delivered, it just gets one pin, like with normal, almost all small arms fire. So the pins make a difference pretty much through several aspects of the game. The first one is giving units orders. The second one is your ability to hit well. So let's talk about the orders first. Up here is a picture of the 6 different orders you can give, and I'll go through kind of how you work them. If I were to give, let's just take an order. If I were to give a fire order, that means my unit is going to stand where it is, and it's going to shoot all of its weapons at a single target. The only exception to this rule are for single-shot weapons, in other words, one-use weapons, and for weapons that fire indirectly, which we'll cover in the 4th lesson. So, aside from those 2 exceptions, every model in the unit has to fire at the same target. Okay, so what you'll do is, as I've mentioned before, no pre-measuring. So you give the fire order to a unit. If they have no pin markers on it, they receive the fire order and execute the fire order. If there are pin markers on them, you'll need to make a morale test. Morale is very simple in this game. You have 3 different quality of units. You have inexperienced, regular, and veteran. Inexperienced have a morale value of 8, regular 9, veteran 10. That is your target number. You take your morale value, subtract the number of pins, and that's the number you need to roll. So in this example, we're going to pretend these are regular units. I have a regular unit with 2 pin markers on them, so I have a morale of 9 minus 2 pins is 7. I need to roll a 7 or less to successfully give them an order. If I am successful, I take away one of the pins and I execute the order. If I fail the order test, barring any special rules that allow you to reroll, the unit does not remove a pin and instead is given a down order, which we'll talk about last in this segment here. Alright. The only other modifiers you have is for the officers. If a lieutenant, first or second lieutenant, is within 6 inches of the unit making the order test, this is an order test, not a morale check, they will then gain a plus to their roll. So a second lieutenant gives a +1 to their roll, plus on morale. A first lieutenant is +2. Now there's also a higher officer, captain, and major, which do +3 and +4 respectively. But their effect bubble is 12 inches, not 6. But typically you're going to have within a 6-inch bubble of a lieutenant, so you get +1 or +2. That is to their existing morale. So in this case, it's 9 minus the 2 pins is 7, plus whatever leadership bonus, 1 or 2, could bring it back up to 9. Leadership bonuses could bring the morale value up higher than 10. However, every roll of 11 or 12, regardless of modifiers, is a failure on an order test or morale test. Again, the Finnish units have an exception in one of their special rules, but other than that, across the board, 11, 12 are fails. We will talk about what if you roll a 12 now. It's called a foo bar. If you roll an order test to give an order, and you roll a 12, natural 12, you do a foo bar. This is the chance for a friendly fire. You roll on a separate table, an excerpt I'll put up right here. You'll see on a 1 or 2, the unit can actually end up shooting at one of your own units. The opponent picks a target unit that is within 12 inches of one of his units, and that's what you're going to have to shoot. You just attack as normal, taking into account any pins you actually have. Now notice on a 4, 5, or 6, the unit then just simply runs without ignoring terrain. It goes 12 inches in a run, goes straight back away from the closest unit can see. That's the foo bar if it failed. Alright, so if, let's say, I want to give an advance order, what I would do then, I use the lieutenant as an example. I'll give him the order. If it's successful, I will move him up to 6 inches. And then from that point, I can choose to shoot at an available target. That's what an advance order is. Infantry units move 6 inches, and then they can fire. Motorcycles and cavalry can move 9 inches, and then fire. Now on a run order, that's a little different. The run order, you get to move twice your normal distance, but you don't fire. So infantry get to run 12 inches. Cavalry motorbikes get to do 18 inches. Okay, that's their run. But again, they run and then they cannot shoot. Now the ambush order, this is a very useful order, and you'll want to think about this. If you do not have a target within sight, you may want to give them an ambush order, which basically says I'm reserving the right to shoot at you at a unit that I can see moving in my line of sight and range. So you simply put the ambush order on. Then I'll explain other qualifying aspects of that rule in later episodes as they come up. But you'll then have that available to you for the rest of the turn. When an opponent's unit moves within your line of sight, or it has to move, then you can interrupt that movement at any point you want and say, I'm going to now spring my ambush and I'm going to fire at you. The opponent pauses his unit where you told him to, then you execute the fire. Or, you turn the ambush order to fire and you execute the fire order from there. Now, that's the point at which you measure distance. You don't measure it before you decide when to have them stop. You decide when you want them to stop, and then you measure. Execute the shooting, and then if anything survives, it can continue the rest of the movement as planned. All right, now the rally. This one's a unique order. It's what you'll want to use if you have multiple pins on a unit, because you'll see in the shooting phase, pins make it much harder to hit. Each pin subtracts 1 from your roll to hit. So it also makes it harder to execute an order test. So if you start getting 3 or 4 or 5 pins on it, you're going to want to do a rally. A rally does not take into account pins. You simply roll equal to or less than the morale value of the unit. If you are successful, you remove 1 plus d6 pins from that unit. So you're at least removing 2. And you can think of it this way. You pass the order test for the rally, you take away the 1 pin for successful order test, and then get the bonus d6 more pins removed. The unit does not move, it does not fire, it just simply is regrouping, shedding pins. Okay? That's going to be important because if at any point a unit has equal to or more than its morale value of pin markers, it flees the field, is removed from play. So an inexperienced unit with 8 pin markers leaves. A regular unit with 9 leaves. A veteran unit with 10 leaves. Pin markers can add up. There's larger weapons that can put a lot more damage on. And of course, if you focus a lot of units from your army, you're going to start stacking pins up. So you'll want to be using the rally order. Finally, the down order is a special order. It is given to a unit when you want to essentially not really take an action but make it harder for your opponent to hit you. Essentially, you do not need to pass an order test to give a down order. So if they have pins on it, you just give them a down order. If you want to try to remove pins, you're going to have to give them some other order. But a down will immediately put the unit down. They basically hugging the ground, and they have a -2 to hit. Now, a down order is special because it can do 2 things. The first one is you can actually, when the unit is targeted by an opponent, you can then declare that you want them to go down, as long as they don't already have an order die. So if they haven't been ordered yet, you can decide to make them go down right then, to make it harder for your opponent to hit them. The opponent cannot change their mind about shooting at them, because they declare it, then you declare whether you're going down. If you do, you pull your order die out of the bag and place it down next to them, and then the opponent resolves their shooting with -2 modifier in addition to whatever they have. Now, at the end of the turn, a unit with a down order on them can remain down for the entire next turn by leaving the down order on them, and then you can roll a d3 and remove that many pins. So that's another way to, again, keep the unit alive by making it harder to hit, but shed some of those pins. So a rally may be good because you'll be able to shed more pins, but you're up there standing up, able to be shot at without penalty. If you go down, you shed fewer pins if you stay down, but at least you're harder to hit. So you may want to, especially if you're holding an objective, you may want to do that. So that's how you give orders and what the orders are. All right, so let's go on to movement. As I said, really quick to cover, when you give an order to advance, you're going to move 6 inches, and if you're going to run, it's going to be 12 inches. And again, in the case of cavalry and bikes, it's 9 inches and 18 inches. All right, let's step back one step and talk about team weapons real quick. Okay, I've got 2 units here. It's a regular infantry squad. It can have 5 or more men. I'll just go ahead and add a couple more in the back just to give you the idea. Now, when you're equipping a squad with a light machine gun, you have to give them a loader. That loader essentially cannot fire his rifle. He's actually part of the team. They act as one, and they fire the number of shots the machine gun has, the light machine gun has. This is part of the squad. This is a squad team weapon. This is the other type of team weapon. There's your medium machine guns, mortars, anti-tank rifles, bazookas, those types. We'll talk in more detail later, but this is also a team weapon. All of them to work together to fire the one gun. In this case, a medium machine gun with 5 shots. When you're firing with, taking casualties with a squad, you do not get to, you can't affect the the team weapon unless you roll exceptional damage, which we'll get to in the actual shooting segment here. But here, when you're shooting at the medium machine gun team, which is itself a team unit, any damage obviously goes to these guys. Now, if at any point the machine gun, the team weapon is down to 1 model, okay, it is considered to be hampered, okay, and that weapon system will be at +1 to hit, or -1 to hit, okay, 1 worse. That's because he doesn't have his assistant, and the gunner actually needs to be the gunner and loader. It is more work, and so it removes the efficiency of the unit. So that's the first stuff you're going to need about team weapons. We'll talk about more about team weapons in the next segment. We're talking about actually shooting. And shooting is actually a very straightforward principle. Whether you advanced or whether you have stood and fired or whether you're ambushing, doesn't matter. Firing is all the same. Each weapon has its own profile, and a quick little image here showing you several different types of small arms profiles. Take a look at the rule book. You'll see these. In the back, there's actually an appendix section that has all these special tables in one place, so you can see what different weapons do. But you'll notice they have different ranges, different number of shots, and that's important. You're going to need enough dice to handle all the shots you're going to do. Now, you may need to actually split the pool of dice up into smaller groups based on what it's going to take to hit. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to talk about cover really quick. This cover is simple, but it seems a little bit overwhelming in this game. So let's take a quick look at kind of a table setup. All right, so let's talk about terrain, first in terms of movement, then in terms of shooting. Make sure we got everything covered. In terms of movement, you really have most of your tables considered open ground. You can end up with also obstacles and rough ground. Rough ground is considered like ruins or forests, where it makes it more difficult for infantry or even vehicles to move through. Obstacles are any type of a wall or even a tank trap, barbed wire. Those would be examples of obstacles. And what they'll do is they'll limit, in all cases, they'll limit the movement. So rough ground and obstacles limit movement by meaning essentially infantry cannot run over obstacles or through rough ground. Okay, they can only advance. Now we'll cover the impact of vehicles when we introduce vehicles in the next lesson. But there is also impassable terrain. You can consider a flaming ruin, a ruin that's on fire, impassable. That would be to infantry or vehicles. Tank traps such as this Czech hedgehog would be impassable to vehicles. Okay, barbed wire would be an obstacle to infantry. It wouldn't necessarily be impassable. All right, so those are really kind of the things you want to keep in mind when you're looking at terrain. Before the game, you want to review with your opponent what is what. So ruins are always rough ground. Okay, farm fields can be rough or open. I mean, we typically run this as a wheat field. Wheat, in most of the times, 4 foot tall. It's going to obscure infantry, but it really doesn't make it hard to move through for vehicles or infantry. At least not as hard as moving through forest. Now, we sometimes use this as a representation of an orchard. So this would be considered kind of open ground with cover. It doesn't block line of sight, but it doesn't obstruct movement either. You can see through it, you can shoot through it with some cover, which we'll talk about in a second, but you can move through it freely. We usually represent this one as a real forest where it's rough ground. You got all that shrubbery and fallen logs and everything in the way, and so you'd only be able to advance through this area. Discuss it with your opponent beforehand so you all agree on what's what. Now when it comes to shooting, you look at terrain, there's really two types of cover it provides. And there are a few other things that also provide cover. There's only two types of cover, real simple, soft and hard. Soft can be considered anything that obstructs the view but doesn't really obstruct the bullets themselves too much. So farm fields that have crops in them, hedges, plant rows like this would be light cover. Trees and forests, light cover. Even wooden fences would be light cover. In addition, shooting through a unit to shoot at another unit, the unit you're shooting through provides light cover. Okay. Now, hard cover is anything that would really not only obscures your view of the opponent, but actually can do pretty well at stopping bullets, if you want to conceptualize it. So, real rocky ground, ruins, and actual stone walls would be considered hard cover. Shooting at a target that's behind a vehicle. So if you happen to have a vehicle here and you want to shoot the infantry behind it, they could potentially be getting hard cover from the vehicle or a vehicle wreck. Okay? All right. Now, to determine from the cover perspective whether something is in cover or not, it's all about tracing line of sight. So we're just going to cover the basics, and then we're going to cover what's called dense terrain. So typically, you're usually going to see the situation where the infantry are all behind a wall. Every model is in cover. That's a hard cover in this case. Now, sometimes you'll be in a situation where either because of the angle of attack or because of the position of the units, such as this unit now you have to look at it and say, are at least 50% of the models obscured by the cover? In this case, no. So they would not get hard cover. In this case, 3 of the 5 models they would get hard cover. It's literally that simple. Okay. In the case of area terrain such as this, if they are entirely within, the model is entirely within, it's counted as in cover. If it's partly in or partly out, like here in this ruin, that model would be out of cover, and the rest of the models would be in cover. Okay? Let's get a close-up of that. Okay, so when you're looking at is it in cover or not on an area terrain, it has to be completely within, not just partially. So this model is not in cover, these 4 are. Okay, so in this particular case, the entire unit would get cover. If a couple more of these models were even further, outside, now the unit does not get cover for being in the ruins. If fire was coming across this wall, they would still get cover. Okay, if it was coming from this direction, it would get, these 3 guys are exposed because they're not in cover, and you would be able to get no cover save for that, or no cover penalties. Now, if the firing unit, let's say this tank is firing from the cover of the farm, the crop field, he's firing through light cover, or even if we put this hedge here, and he's firing over the light cover, he's not up against it. There's hard cover involved and soft cover involved. You only get the best of the two. So if there's hard cover, then they would get hard cover. In this case, for example, we'll use this example here. We have 3 units that are not in cover, so they don't get the hard cover save, but because he's shooting over the soft cover, they will get soft cover modifier to his shooting. Okay? So that's how that would end up working. Now let's talk about shooting within walls and barricades, stuff like this. This is really important. I'm going to go ahead and let's reposition the wall here. Okay. Now, anytime you want to shoot at an enemy model, you are going to have to determine, and you're not near a wall, you're going to have to consider that wall as hard cover, okay? And you're going to be shooting over it. So here's a couple enemy soldiers. They're out in the open. This unit is not up against the wall, so in order to shoot them, they're going to be penalized for the cover, hard cover, okay? If the unit the models are in base contact with the wall, they do not now have a penalty for shooting over that cover. Of course, these models would have a penalty of hard cover if shooting at them, but they will not have a penalty shooting at these guys. Okay, that's kind of how walls and barricades work when it comes to the cover. Okay. Now let's talk about the last aspect, and this is where the concept of dense terrain comes in. Let's move things around a bit. Dense terrain is considered situations where the terrain is it's always going to be an area of terrain of some sort, but it blocks line of sight. Now that could be a crop field that's in real life significantly tall. Let's say it was a crop. You can think of the U.S. right now. Corn crops, and they can get 8 foot tall. That's going to block line of sight. Okay, from an infantryman's perspective, all forests generally do that. They block line of sight because the undergrowth is so heavy. Ruins can sometimes be considered rough, dense terrain. It depends on how you want to interpret it. If you can look at and find examples of ruins that are so dense that you can't see through it very far, then you find other open ruins that are very easy to see through quite a distance. So again, discuss with your opponent beforehand. But dense terrain works very simply. The actual trees in a forest, for example, don't really matter. The area of the outline does. So you can move these around to make it easy for you to place your models. Any model within dense terrain is always considered rough ground. Every model in there is considered in usually soft cover. It's the cover the bonus that would go with it, with the cover terrain you're actually talking about. So if this were actually ruins, you get the hard cover. If it's forest, it's soft cover. Now the rules are you can see into and you can see out of dense terrain, but you cannot see through it. So we'll use these enemy models here as an example. They can see this infantry unit, and they can exchange fire just fine. However, if this unit were outside and over here, this unit cannot trace a line of sight through the terrain. Okay, that's simply not possible because that's why it's considered dense terrain. Now we'll use a long-on example here. We're going to have a unit here, 2-man squad, which for illustration purposes, and again, just like with the earlier example with the wall and hardcover, you're going to look at the target unit from the perspective of here, and can the firing unit see more than half or more of the squad, the defending unit? There's 5 men in here. They can only see 2, so this unit gets benefit of the cover of this dense area, which happens to be soft cover in this case. If they could see 3 of the 5, well then there's no cover. Okay, just whatever cover may have been in place here, if there were any. All right, so that's generally how cover works, both in the terrain, how it impacts both shooting and movement. There's one thing that we need to talk about because this is often confusing and forgotten in the rules. We're going to talk about how dense terrain, how you can be in it, and how you may be affected by the cover of this as a firing unit. When we first started, we had the unit here. And we're going to make this simple. We're going to have this unit out here in the open, no cover at all. Because this unit is in the dense terrain and not actually touching the edge, they will suffer the soft cover penalty for shooting through the soft cover into this unit. Okay? In order to avoid that, you need to have the unit so that its bases are on the edge of the, right touching the edge of the terrain. Now they're considered to be right at the edge. They found a good position to hide in the brush, and now there is no cover penalty for them shooting out. Now, if this unit were over here, they're still touching the edge, but here's the important part. The shots going toward this unit, this guy can shoot directly out he's only going through less than an inch of this cover, so he wouldn't have a penalty. But all of these guys are shooting more than 1 inch through the dense terrain to get to this. So this unit is since more than 50% are shooting through the terrain to get to the target, they will take a -1 soft cover penalty in shooting. All right, so that's how you kind of generally treat dense terrain. I'm going to mention here very quickly an impact to the close assault or charging, which we'll get to in a later phase today. Any unit that is right on the edge like this, though they no longer suffer a penalty for the cover they're in when they're shooting out, they are actually considered to not be in the terrain when it comes to units charging. A unit can charge them and reach them into base contact without actually entering the soft cover. That's important because, remember, moving through rough terrain or an obstacle limits you to an advance. And in the case of charges, limits you to a 6-inch movement. So if these men were inside, even like this, they would have a -1 to shoot because of the terrain they're shooting through, but enemy units can't charge from more than 6 inches away. But by being right up at the edge, the enemy will be able to charge at 6 inches, or at more than 6 inches away. We'll cover that in a little bit more detail in a couple minutes. Alright, so let's go back into shooting. Alright, so as I mentioned before, it's really simple. Shooting is very simple. Every model hits on a 3+, and every model has, subject to modifiers when it shoots. Inexperienced infantry are the only infantry that suffer a penalty for their quality. Inexperienced infantry are -1 to hit, so the best they can hit on their 4s, 4 or higher. What you try to do is roll equal to or higher than that number. Once you've figured out what's in range, or which models are within range, you are then going to determine if it's short or long range. Now, short range is less than half the weapon's maximum range. Long range is anything more than half of that distance out to its full range. So, in this particular case, we're looking at men with rifles, with the exception of this guy's the light machine gun. He's got a 36-inch range. Here's a submachine gun with 12-inch range, 2 rifles at 24-inch range. So here, the rifles are within 8 inches, so that's within half of maximum range, which is 24. So they're in short range. The submachine gun, its max range is 12. So since these models are at 8 inches away, he is actually at long range. And of course, the light machine gun's range is 36, so it'll be short range. So the submachine gun would actually be at a -1 to hit because it's shooting at long range. All right, so you figure out the penalty for, if there's a penalty for being inexperienced, if there's a penalty for being long ranged, then whether the unit has moved before firing. Except for submachine guns, assault rifles, and pistols, any unit or model that moves before firing suffers another -1 to hit. Okay, and finally, you figure out what cover are they in. I'll show a quick chart here of what the different modifiers are, and then from there you can kind of see, what you're going to be doing as far as rolling to hit. I also mentioned now with this graphic showing, you can see when the target unit has a down order on it, let's say these were down, that would be a -2 again to hit. And then finally, because it's small team in this particular case, these would also be -1 to hit. All right, well, so let's actually use this the way it's set up now. These guys are going to be in the light cover. They are a small team, okay? And these guys have moved to get into position. Okay, we're going to make that assumption. So that means that the British infantry squad actually had to move, to take an advance order to get into position. And we're going to leave these guys up. They're not going to go down at this moment. So they had an advance order on them. And so let's start with the submachine gun. Okay? Submachine gun is an assault weapon, just like pistols and assault rifles. There's no penalty to moving. Alright, so, but he is at long range, so we have long range is -1, light cover is -2, and small team is -3. So, essentially, the way we like to do it is you need a 3 to hit. Long range, soft cover, small team, you need a 6 to hit. Okay, that's how we usually do it. So, you'd roll his 2 shots, on 6s he'll hit. For the rifle, now, they have the same penalties for cover and small team, but they suffer a movement penalty, whereas he did not. These both are within short range though, so they don't, essentially the short range cancels out the fact they moved. So this is still going to need 6s, and so would the light machine gun. So let's take it one further. Let's just pretend that these are actually going to be a little further apart. Let's say they're going to be, they're in cover still, and these guys are shooting from the ruins. Okay, so now we know we're over 12 inches. Okay, all right. Yes, we're at 15 inches. 14 inches is the closest. So now let's look at this with the rifle example, because light machine gun is still short range. But the rifles, for example, start with hitting on 3s. Okay, they are at long range. There is light cover involved, and it's small team. And we also mentioned they have an advance order, which means they moved. So that means a 7. Okay, obviously you can't roll a 7 on a 6-sided die. Anytime the modifiers make it to be the chance to hit being more than a 6, there's what's called nigh impossible shots. That's the rule. So basically, there's always a chance you're going to hit as long as the weapon is within range. To make it possible, what you do is anytime the modifiers pull you into that range, you simply roll, and you need to basically roll 6s, and then those 6s need to roll another. So we call it 6s followed by 6s. Sometimes you hear a super 6, different terms. So you roll the dice. So we have 2 rifle shots, and a 4 and a 2, so both miss. Had one of these or either of them been a 6, on that first roll, I would get to roll again. And now if I roll a 6 to hit, then the shot would actually hit. So it's a 1 in 36 chance of hitting when it gets that, when you get those modifiers get up too high. But at least there's a chance. So never pass up the chance of hitting. If there's something in range, take a shot at it, okay? Just my advice. All right, let's talk about wounding now. This is going to be the target unit. They've had their shot, they've done their work, but now they're being targeted by an opponent. Let's say a machine gun team or another squad shoots at them, and they manage to score a couple hits. Let's say there's 2 hits. Now, in bolt action, you determine the wound next. The chance to wound is based entirely upon a unit's experience. And there are only 2 modifiers. One we'll talk about in the 4th video, and one we will talk about today. The first fact is, inexperienced, you will kill a model that's been hit. So for each hit, you'll roll a die. And for inexperienced, on a 3+, a model will die. For regulars, it's on a 4+, and for veterans, it's on a 5+. So here I roll 2 dice. These are regular, so I need a 4 or better. I have a 5 and a 6. Okay, excellent. So 2 guys are dead. Now because the 6 was rolled, this is potentially it's called an exceptional damage. When I get a 6, I roll the die again. And if it's a 6 again, in this case it's not, if it is a 6, I as the shooter get to choose which model I remove. Now that could be a light machine gun, it could be the NCO, it could be a submachine gun, it could be whatever you believe is the most important thing to take out of that unit. Alright, so that's wounding. That's all there is. Now, if a single round of firing from an attacking unit removes 50% or more of the existing models from the unit. So if the model starts the turn, or sorry, it starts, if it is targeted and it has 4 models when it is targeted, and that shooting takes out 2 of the models, the remaining have to take a morale test immediately. Now this is a morale test, not an order test. Okay. Simply roll. It's already taken a pin for the unit being hit, on top of whatever pins it may have already had. So it may or may not be without an NCO. In this case, it's not. He's still here. So you do an immediate morale check. If he makes his morale check, the unit stays put. If he fails the morale check, the unit is removed from the game, and it could count as a kill point. So that's all there really you need to understand about shooting and wounding and taking casualties. All right, now let's talk about close combat. Close combat is really the most deadly way to engage in combat in bolt action. When you do so, one unit or the other will be destroyed. There is nothing in between. In order to charge into close combat, you need to be within range of the target unit, and you need to give the unit a successful run order. Okay? Now, this is where the terrain rules are very specific. You can run through rough ground, but you can only, when you're charging an enemy unit, but you can only do so at 6 inches. So that's why it's important. When you go over obstacles or through rough ground and on the charge, it's only half your full movement, so it's half the run. So 6 inches for infantry, 9 for horses and motorbikes and bicycles. All right, so now that you've got, whether or not you're in range. Now this is actually a very good example, because walls or obstacles like this impact how you charge. If this is the charging unit, they need to get to the base of the wall, because these models are touching the wall. All this unit needs to do is make it to the base of this wall. Now remember, in the game, you have to stay more than 1 inch away from every other unit, enemy or friend. So this is the only time you can get closer than 1 inch to an enemy model. Okay. The one thing you cannot do, for example, is run past another unit with closer than 1 inch in order to get to them. So all these models would have to make a complete arc here to get outside of 1 inch from here. So you have to be very careful as you measure the distance to getting your models in. What you're going to do is you're actually going to measure the closest 2 unit models, and if they're within range, the charge went off successfully. So this unit is within 12 inches of that wall. They can successfully charge and engage in combat. And you just basically put them right up against the wall. Just pack them in there. It doesn't matter where you put them. Just put them right up against. Because we're not going to consider actual model-to-model kind of contact. This is just generalized. But if we were to attack in the other direction, for example, this unit wanted to charge this unit, they would have to hop over this obstacle, the wall, which means they can only charge 6 inches. They're 9 inches away. They're actually 9.5 inches away. They cannot charge this by going over the wall. Now what they can do is decide to go around the wall if there's room. And so they, obviously, since this one model is 9.5 inches away, around the curve it's 10 inches, so he's within 12 inches, he can make the charge. Now remember, we've talked in our games here, the rough farm fields like this, wheat aren't rough ground. So they'd be able to charge in, no problem. Alright, now before the charge is completed, however, or is done, the targeted unit, the unit being charged, has a chance to react. Now, this is very important. If the charge originates within 6 inches of the charged unit, the target cannot react. If the target unit already has an order die on it, it cannot react. But if it does not have an order die, it has the option of reacting. Reacting is very simple. You pull out an order die and you say, I'm going to fire. And then you put a fire order die down right next to him, and you shoot right at the beginning, so they have not moved yet. The charging models have not moved yet. And you shoot with taking into account pins and hard cover or light cover, whatever the cover is. So it's often dangerous to charge an enemy unit that is more than 12 inches, more than 6 inches away, and doesn't already have pins on it, because you can see how deadly it can be if I've got multiple shots. In this, if they're going to charge here, I've got 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 shots and light cover. So we're looking at 8 shots, hitting on 4s, 5s for the submachine gun. That's going to cause damage, okay? And that could whittle down the number of models that are going to be able to make the assault. So as a quick example, let's do that. I'm going to use my 8 shots here, okay? And one of them, I'm going to use the 2 from the submachine gun are going to be the opaque color. The rest are going to be from everybody else. So 4s to hit, 5s to hit with the submachine gun. The submachine gun misses completely, and so does one of these. So I got 5 hits. If they're regular, I roll damage, and I've lost 2 models. So 2 guys don't make it in. So now they're going to charge in and only get 3 attacks instead of the original 5. So it's pretty dangerous to charge a unit that's not pinned already. All right, so once you engage, let's go ahead and pretend there's no damage done. If they charge, sorry, we're going to the other way around. Let's do this. If you're charging to an obstacle and you're fighting over an obstacle, or your charge and the target was in rough ground, or you had to go through rough ground to get to the target, attacks are simultaneous. If the charge was over open ground and you meet the opponent in open ground, the charging unit goes first. Okay? So let's do that first. Let's assume, we're going to be like we had it originally. We're going and attacking against over the obstacle. So simultaneous, so there's no submachine guns in this, no pistols. So there's 5 attacks going in, and these are all regulars. There is no roll to hit in close combat. It's simply, do I kill? So again, they're regulars, so I need 4s to kill, so I get 5 attacks, and I have a 4, 5, and a 6. That means 3 of these guys are dead. So you can just lay them on their side right now, knowing that they're going to die, they're going to be removed. But this way you know how many attacks you get. Now, here each model gets an attack, but the submachine gun gets a special attack, because submachine gun has the assault special rule on it, like a pistol would. If I hit or wound with the submachine gun or pistol, then what I will end up with is another chance to wound. So that's what basically confers the tough fighter special rule. So 4 regular and 1 with tough fighter. Alrighty? Tough fighter 1 has wounded and one of the others. So I will now roll the tough fighter again, and it's a 6, so I wound again. So I've done 3 damage to them. Now this is a special, it's a 6, so there's potential that I could get exceptional damage. So I roll it, and no, it didn't. So both sides have lost 3 models. That's a draw, which means we remove the models that were killed, and then we continue with the remaining. And again, the second round of close combat, and every subsequent round after the first, is always simultaneous, whether it was over an obstacle or not. So it's 2 against 2, but I've got the NCO, so there's a tough fighter involved. So first we're going to have the 2 here. We're just going to go ahead and roll. I got 1 kill. I'm going to make him the kill. And then rolling back, I've got 2 kills. So this unit is dead, this unit wins, but he only has 1 left. Now, because the winner of the close combat will end up consolidating d6 inches. In this case, just 3, and you can do whatever you want with them in that direction. No pins are delivered, and no pins are removed as a result of close combat. Okay. Now, one point I want to clarify is, let's go back to the reaction fire. Do not forget this, because it's very easy to forget in the excitement of the moment. When reaction fire occurs, remember that if the charging squad takes casualties that are at least 50% of the starting unit size, they have to make an immediate morale test to basically to stay on the board. So it is possible that reaction fire could completely eliminate a charging unit. So again, be very careful not to charge units that are not sufficiently pinned, or charge them within 6 inches. All right, so let's recap real quick on rounds of close combat. Each round of close combat is each unit has a chance to roll to wound. At the end of each round, whichever unit has scored the most wounds is considered the winner. There's nothing that can stop that unless there's a special rule involved with a given unit in a player's nationality army list. But in general, whoever deals out the most wounds in a given round of close combat wins. The defending unit, the one that lost the most, is removed from the game immediately. Okay. So, if you got any questions, put them down in the comments below. Let's move on to the next topic. All right, next thing I want to cover really quick is sort of a reminder about the concept of small team. Anytime a squad or unit has 2 or fewer models in the unit remaining, and that will be, like, for example, an officer that's alone or an officer with 1 assistant, a infantry squad that's lost 3 of its men, it's only got 2 left, for example, or an artillery crew, such as an anti-tank gun, with 1 model left. Any of those are considered small team, and the opponent will receive a -1 penalty to hit them. So sometimes, getting whittled down to only having 2 men left may actually make it easier for you to keep the unit on the table, and makes those down orders to keep them alive even stronger. Okay, so let's cover the next piece of information I want to really get into, and that's the Snap 2 or Men Snap 2 order. That's the ability any officer, whether it's a first or second lieutenant, of captain or major, he has an ability to activate units nearby when he is successfully given an order die. So, when you draw an order die out of the bag and it's yours, you can give your HQ an order, or officer an order. If you are successful, meaning he does not fail his orders test, or you don't give him a down order, you give him any other type of order, then you can give a number of additional units within a certain radius an order die. You simply grab that many dice out of the bag that are yours, and you put them down by the units you're going to activate. To do this, you simply measure from the officer model itself out. For a lieutenant, first or second lieutenant, you measure out 6 inches. Any units within there are a candidate for the Snap 2. For a captain or a major, you've got a 12-inch bubble. Now, a second lieutenant can activate 1 additional unit. A first lieutenant can activate 2 additional units. A captain can activate 3. A major can activate 4. They can activate vehicles and tanks, not just necessarily the infantry units with them. In fact, they can actually activate any unit in your army list that's part of that same nationality. So if you happen to be running a game where you've got 2, like you have a French component of your army and a British component of your army, let's say in World War, the early war, the French officer wouldn't be able to give orders to the British officer and vice versa, or British unit. But the British can give orders to any unit in his any British unit that you have in your army list for that game. All right, a couple of rules to keep in mind. The first thing is you issue the order to him, the officer first. Then you pick the units you're going to activate. So you make the order test, then decide whether you're going to do snap 2, and then you measure which units will actually be eligible. Then you pick those units and you draw a die for each one. You place the die in any order, activate those units in any order you want, and then, but you have to activate each of them individually, execute their entire order before going on to the next one. Now there's some additional restrictions that may apply, and we'll talk about that in subsequent lessons where those other qualifying situations happen to occur. But remember, it's the reason you want to use this is, for example, to force your dice out of the bag to focus fire on a particular unit that you need to suppress, right? Put pins on. However, by taking dice out of the bag, obviously there's fewer left to draw, and your opponent will then be more likely to activate the next unit and so on. All right. So just simple caution there, but Snap 2 is very, very useful for a lot of different means in the game. All right. Now I want to talk about buildings. Buildings add a neat extra level of detail to the game. Now you can play buildings as impassable, in which case they just provide hard cover when they're obscuring a target. For example, this half track here is more than 50% obscured. It would get hard cover, or opponent would be -2 to hit it. But it's more fun to play with them as we can actually enter them. Now, Warlord recommends that your buildings don't get any much bigger than a kind of 6x6. Think of it like 36 square inches. So here's a 4x4 building. This one's actually, excluding the staircase, 7x4. Okay, that's because that's about the size that will hold a single unit. Okay, now a single unit can occupy, only a single unit, sorry, can occupy each floor of the building. So this building could have one unit on each of the 3 floors. Okay, this building, for example, only really has 2 floors, though you can agree ahead of time. This is why it's important to talk to your opponent. Consider this attic as a 3rd floor. Now there's no windows, but if you were to start out the game in that building on the 3rd level, you can actually put a loophole, declare that you put a loophole in one of the 4 sides of the building, and the unit can then shoot out of that. All right, here's how you do the shooting. For each normal opening, like a window or a door, 2 models are assumed to be able to shoot out of it. Okay. In addition, if you happen to have a building with a flat top, not a peaked one, like which actually has a top that you can put models on, they actually limit you to 5 models firing off any one side of the building. And here's why. Any unit in the building can it can only fire 2 per fire point, but it can fire at multiple units. Unlike the normal rules where a single unit has to shoot at 1 target, a unit in a building can split its fire. So if you have a 10-man squad in the 2nd floor here, 6 men can shoot at something out of this that's in line of sight from this side. 4 guys can shoot out of something from this side, and there happens to be 3 on the back as well. So you can split those 10 guys to shoot at up to 4 different units. Okay. But of course, they can all have to have the same order, fire order in that case, or advance order if you're going to move. I'll explain movement in a second. But firing is a little different in the building. It does complicate things, and a lot of people forget that that's how the rule is written, and they end up firing only the number of models that can actually see out the one side. Or if, for example, the unit's out here, they would fire just out the fire points that they can draw a line of sight to that. So give it some thought in the future about how you're going to want to shoot outside of a building. All right. We'll cover this in more detail in a later video, though. Okay, as far as moving into a building, it's really easy. You can only enter a building with a run order. You can't advance into it. You have to actually run into it, no matter how far you have to go. In order to enter a building, you give the unit a run order, and every model needs to be able to get within 1 inch of an opening, whether it's a window or a door, on the ground floor. Then they're considered in. Now, if they want to then move, for example, to the 2nd or potentially 3rd floor, or conversely move down, an advance order will allow you to move 1 floor down or up, and a run order will allow you to move 1 or 2 levels up or down. That's useful because you can be able to charge enemy models on a different floor in the building. Okay. Now, when you are shot at, your units in the building is shot at, they are considered in hard cover automatically. So your opponent's -2 to hit them. Now, there are other weapons situations where that will be different. We'll talk about those in future videos. But for now, just infantry small arms fire, for example, machine guns, heavy machine guns and autocannons, just firing their normal shots, will be at -2 to hit. In addition, any hits that go in are actually harder to kill with because buildings confer an extra protection bonus, which basically gives you a -1 to kill them. So a regular unit is normally, the models are killed on a 4, 5, or 6. In a building, they're only killed on a 5 or 6. That means veteran units in a building, their models are only killed on a 6. That really helps you preserve your units. Now remember, before you get too excited about buildings, there are weapons that will make it easier to kill your models. So if you're facing machine gun fire, definitely go inside a building, especially in these early games as you're learning this game. All right, a couple special rules related to buildings as well. In a case of fixed weapons, which have a limited arc of fire, for example, machine guns, they only have a 90-degree arc in one direction. Essentially, you as a player have to specify which opening they're deployed behind. Usually it's a window or a door, right? But you have to specify it. And if that is the only place from which that unit can draw its line of fire and line of sight. Now, if you want to change its position, you have to give it an advance order or a run order. Okay? You can only essentially what you're doing is you're doing an advance order would allow you to turn 90 degrees, for example, between this and this window. A run order would allow you to move completely to one of these other windows. All right? So very important for fixed weapons. Now, plunging fire is a special rule that really only works on the higher level floors of a building. Essentially, if you're on an upper floor and you are firing at a target that's with an armored target that's within 12 inches, so on the second floor or higher, within 12 inches, so let's just place this out to 12 inch away, which would be right about here. Okay? Yeah, let's put it out here. So it's within 12 inches. Okay? The models in here are considered to be getting plunging fire. In other words, they're actually hitting against the top armor. So they're not hitting the side or front, they're hitting the top, which basically gives you a +1 penetration. However, there's going to be other rules from other weapon systems that will kind of interact with the building rules a little differently. We'll cover those in future videos. All right, but that's essentially all that you need to know at this point about buildings. Play them as impassable, or play them, as I enjoy, as separate parts of the terrain where you can occupy. Now, if you do have units or building models that come apart where you can actually have internal rooms, you'll see an example of this in the first field exercise. You can specify that each of those rooms is a separate room for purposes of the models that move through it. So they can enter into one room on the run order, and if they want to go to the other one, they have to use an advance order. So again, talk it through with your opponent. We always run these as a single floor, one big open room, simply because we can't open the building up to be more specific. All right, so that's infantry combat, and really most of the rules, all in a nutshell. It's very, very simple. Now, if you'll stick around, the next video will be a battle report with a friend of mine who is just learning. As a matter of fact, it was his first bolt action game. And the two lists we played on a 4 foot by 4 foot table, 5 units each. Pretty much, they were not identical, but you can see they were structured the same. You'll see that a lot of these rules played out very, very, right almost in your face kind of thing, which is really going to be kind of exciting to be able to see what it is we just covered in the classroom, put practice on the table. So I hope you enjoy the next video and the bat rep that it is. All right, thank you for sticking around. Again, share, like, subscribe, especially if you know any players who are wanting to learn bolt action or need to, they're just starting and need to learn the rules. Send them this way. All right? Thanks a lot. See you in the next video. Bye-bye.